Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Lucas Chaffee, lead engineer here at QiqoChat in New York. I'm with Kennan Salinero, executive director of Reimagine Science, who put together a great TEDx event on QiqoChat just 2 weeks ago. And so we reached out to her, invited her onto the show to hear more about her perspective in putting this event on, lessons that she can share with others who are organizing different events in the future. So Kennan, welcome. And this is a free-flowing conversation. I'll turn over to you and I'll drop in some questions from time to time.
Excellent, Lucas. Thanks, and it's good to be with you again. Yes, so it's interesting. I've actually known you, Lucas, for a while because of our common attendance at the Open Space for Peace and Performance, I think it is, uh, at Columbia in January every year, and I've gone to, I think, three of them now. And so I knew about QiqoChat before I got a chance to practice on it, and I really got to utilize its features explicitly for the first time just this last August when the She's Geeky conference that my friend Kalia Hamlin runs had gone on to the platform. And it was so clear that the ability to choose your own breakout room is just a really powerful freedom of choice and a really powerful component for running the kinds of events that I've been um, I guess insisting on might be a correct phrase, ever since our very first Science Sun Summit in 2010 when Suzanne Daigle introduced me to open space, and we've done nothing but those kinds of events ever since. And TEDx is very different than an open space event, but it shares some similarities. So I'll give a little bit of background about TEDx versus TED. So a lot of people know TED Talks, and the TED platform is one that was started as kind of a private elitist conference in Long Beach many years ago. And then when Chris Anderson took over, there was this movement to make all the content free online. So it really had a shift in purpose and in sort of intellect of what they were there for. Because that's an event that's closed door, paid attendance, week long event. Most recently, it's been in Vancouver regularly. They there was this movement to replicate it so that anyone anywhere could run their own TED-like event, and they called it TEDx, locally organized, independently organized TEDx event. And there are it's completely independent. Like TED doesn't do anything for TEDx organizers other than ultimately at the end of it host the talks online. But there's a lot of rules so that the quality and the mission stay clean. And and in regards to being like an open space event, the idea of TED and TEDx events both are that there's a lot of free will, a lot of choice. The speakers can't fly in and give their talk and leave. They're actually required to be there for the whole time. They're required to come from the audience to the stage. So there's just a lot that's trying to keep everything so that everyone's there together to share great ideas. And when COVID 19 came into play, we had already had practice at Reimagine Science with doing virtual because we've been a virtual organization since 2008 when we first incorporated. We're incorporated in Washington, D.C. I live in California. My board members have been all over the country. So we've never been a brick and mortar organization from the beginning. And because our mission is so global, we concentrate on the United States because that's plenty big for science. There's plenty of science going on in the US. But because it's so large, virtual is what works because you want to have access for scientists anywhere that are interested in the conversation or just members of society that are intrigued by that interface between science and society. So we had a fair amount of practice on virtual events. What we hadn't done yet was a TEDx where we staged the speakers and had a TEDx event that was virtual. So really, the only thing that would do for me was QiqoChat was the only platform I knew that could provide anything near the kind of environment that a TEDx event has. So I'll describe a little bit about our 2016 one, which was our last Flesh and Blood TEDx event. It was in Livermore. I used to be the curator for TEDx Livermore since 2013. And one of my favorite speakers there, Alexandra Ivanovich from Paris, did virtual reality, and we had a pop-up VR lab. And then we also had this gorgeous work from one of our speakers who's an artist and does place-based art. So we had a pop-up gallery, which was a beautiful gallery with all her artwork, which was brought in for a single day event with all the installation that was necessary for that and some very large pieces. We have a bookstore at all of our TEDx events that are books that are either around the theme or books that are written by the speakers themselves. Um, when we did our uh, creativity, Uncork Your Creativity in 2014, so that was the one before, we did a whole community wide design lab. So we did a timeline for the region, 50 years past, 50 years in the future, and we did a design lab with all the materials. So it's very interactive, and people can choose. They can't go into the auditorium once the speaker has started, so that you don't get the opening of the doors and the light, etc. But they don't have to go to all the talks. It's designed for free choice and for immersion and for creativity and for rest time and all of that. And you're not going to get that on a Zoom platform. So not only was QiqoChat, I could tell it was really well designed for this, but as Joey went through the development and really leaned into what I was describing and asking for, and when I did the tour with you and Joey both, I could tell that, and you were pointing some things out to me like spatial chat, etc. But I would say Joey in particular picked up the scent of what I was trying to create. And it had all those different corners and pockets and corridors that I would have wished for. So it was really fabulous that way. And I don't think I'm alone because I figured out where the login logs are on there. There's like too many layers of details to find on QiqoChat. Luckily, you've built them, you know all of them, but I've niggled around some, and I could see that other people were doing the same thing that I was doing, which is after our event was over, I was going and checking out all these different rooms, and then I checked in with we had a jewelry store, right? And I checked in with Maylee to see, oh, like Maylee, did anybody come? Absolutely, like people came, she met them. Um, I purchased a couple of pieces. She was delighted with how it went. So I went and poked around afterwards and found new corners and nooks and crannies myself.
Can you tell us some of those spaces that you've created? So you're the first event on QiqoChat that brought in a jewelry store, for example.
Yes, I can probably, let me see if I'm just going to go ahead and share what it looks like because I love the graphics that Joey brought in. And TED and TEDx have a lot of rules around what you can do for graphics. And Joey, um, he stepped into those rules and brought some new levels of beauty. So I love this. I didn't do the participate now yet because I wanted to show this original screen. I just loved this graphic that he put behind the countdown graphics that were required. And then
Joey's on
coming
our
in,
team. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, Joey, you found a great. And he's like, well, I put it together. I'm like, I was totally stunned. I was like,
right?
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. I was stunned too. And then here we are on the landing page. And of course, he has this little video loop on here. And our theme had four different areas. I described it as air, earth, water, and fire. But we had a coral reef specialist. And so the water theme was just fantastic for me. And what I loved are like each one of these windows into these areas has its own specific um, landing pages behind it. So the program, the speakers, the welcome message. Um, and so there's all of this content even just here on the landing page, but then here are the rooms. And so we had a hands-on immersive event for this TEDx, as I've described for our 2014 one as well. And it was funny, Lucas, you'll remember we were thinking that people would split off and decide if they wanted to join or not, but everybody was in the main room here and they all just stayed. And we decided to just run it in the main room with everybody participating. And that was very organic. It wasn't how we'd planned it. And it went really well. Um, the green room was my ironic um, terminology. And I actually thought I'd gotten talked out of it, but it's where usually when we do our live events, it's where the speakers can go for a little break and some calming their nerves and some snacks and stuff. So it's a speakers only room, like for Saturday Night Live. But here it was where the speakers weren't, but everything about the speakers was. So our green room had a representation of materials from each of our different speakers. And they all chose what they wanted to share, and Joey just slapped it right in there. So this was great. And this was done just as we were coming to the start point. So it came together beautifully. We had Q&A rooms with each of the speakers, so all 4 speakers. Our one speaker, actually, Daniel Wright, was in labor on the day of the event. We knew that might be coming because she recorded her talk only 2 weeks shy of her due date. So she was replaced very ably by Morgan, um, I think it's Smith, who's part of, yes, Morgan Smith, who's part of her organization. So she was, as represented by Morgan, in a Q&A room, Michelle Weber, Craig Lewis, Joanna Nelson. And I'll say, too, that our speakers, it was really great that both Morgan and Craig came the night before for the dry run practice to get used to the platform. It made a huge difference. They knew where to go. It went from something that was kind of confronting to where they felt a little practiced in it. And I can tell you, Craig was just, he was delighted with the whole day. I hadn't seen somebody switch so much from being maybe even a little hard to work with in terms of trying to fulfill his very tight schedule and not be too demanding of him, to just being full of love and sunshine and smiles during the event. He loved it. The jewelry store with Meili, and this is actually, I met her at She's Geeky years ago. She's a PhD biologist that makes beautiful jewelry. Our bookstore. And then I loved these last 4 here. So the meditation room was, I think, Lucas, you or Joey suggested it. So it's something that you already have and that you've already used in other events. And it was a perfect addition. It's not something that I would have known to set up here. So that was fantastic. And I know that several people used it. Um, 2 of these are spatial chats, and a number of us congregated after the event to go use the spatial chat. And then another was just a place where you could do your own Zoom. So we had quite a number of rooms. I'll go ahead and stop sharing if you think that's a slow enough tour. Or did you want me to click on any of these? Because I will be happy to do that.
Let's
Like
see
the
the jewelry
coffee
store,
shop.
please.
Oh, okay.
The jewelry store would be great.
Yeah.
So this, because the store wasn't embeddable, Joey took the elements from that page, the images and text, and then linked out to each of those individual ideas. That was his idea from a fashion show that we supported on the platform. And the meditation room was from an open space facilitator, April Jefferson, who put together, along with Lena, a 24-hour open space. And they had this, just a place where there's no video, just a YouTube video that you could watch, but not a Zoom video to join. You just go there and
I'll
you
click
listen
on
to,
it. Yeah.
and I think the video, I don't know. Oh, I think
Oh, it's been switched
yeah,
out.
we're switching it into the next event. Yes.
While
So
you're doing that, I got to go to the coffee shop while that
mhm.
one's. But yeah,
Great.
it was beautiful. It was just really beautiful.
And these images switch out as it moves to the next event too. And spatial chat, for those that aren't familiar, is another great complement to Zoom because you can move your dot. Kennan is that green K in that circle in the center. She can move herself from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen and mingle with people and only talk with the people that she's nearby. A great complement to the Zoom's capabilities, which are also wonderful. So thank you for sharing the screen here, Kennan. And what I found remarkable about your event, well, a few things. One, what you did, call it the run of show or the minute by minute agenda, because it was a compact event and it had a flow to it and there were multiple things happening at different times. I like very much how you structured it out. You had a lot of volunteers working to help bring this on. You had a great master of ceremonies and others who were doing introductions, welcome talks, and it came together very well with all those moving parts from people who gave from their heart. And that definitely came out in the emotion. Also blending the recorded video that you got from TED for several of those to intersperse with the live presentations was also quite powerful and complex, and you managed that all. So are there some things that surprised you about the process in terms of organizing a group of this many people? Were there things that you'd like the platform to do differently? Are there things that worked well? When you just think of how it went as a planner, as an organizer, the length of time it took, any thoughts that you'd like to share with people who might be planning on organizing their first event on QiqoChat?
Well, it definitely helped for me to participate in the She's Geeky, so that me being a little bit led by the hand on how to click, where to click, not just on an intro tour, but as a participant in an event, gave not only the beauty of those events, I love the She's Geeky, but enough time in the rooms and remembering how you clicked in and clicked out, that it gave me a comfort level that was really necessary for me. And I also noted, because I did come into some of the office hours, the uptake by some of the science, the different science societies, so that it started to be adopted within my own domain of scientists. So those two probably made a difference for me in terms of comfort level and knowing how to expect what to expect. The other thing that I would say happened in that flow of event, that comes, the original spreadsheet actually was from TEDx San Diego years ago, and I just keep reusing the same spreadsheet. And I would say, Lucas, you and I were dancing during the event, because I practiced a lot on how to bring, I was practicing on how to launch the videos, as you said, the ones that were from TED and the ones that we had ourselves, and then the live events. So for a couple days before, I was practicing transitions and finding one platform was working much better than another one, practicing with the audio because we played music, and that was one of my places I slipped up because the audio wasn't playing and I could have sworn I clicked the right buttons. But my practice was really necessary to have my transitions go even okay. And I was having to be a little bit facile as I was going through, which is not unusual. That's been my experience every time we've done a TEDx, because the timing is really tight. But you were right there also. In fact, we wouldn't have had a recording, except I was just thinking about it. And that's right, when you chatted with me, do we need to record this? And so you read my mind, because I realized I hadn't started that. So you were a safety net for me, because you were thinking about things that I might have dropped or slipped through several times. There were things that slipped through my thinking that you caught. And the back channel communication for that was really useful. Now I'm a little hesitant for sharing all of this, because I know that you are already spread thin, supporting the events and building events and having other people do events, and not wanting to have to handhold all of them for each and every one. But I would say this one was probably enough more complex that it was useful. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's certainly stretched us because we did some new things here that we hadn't done before. When an organizer wants to blend recorded video with live video, that does significantly increase the complexity. But I thought that it was delivered very, very well. Your event was emotional for many people, and it really touched them. It was, it was about climate, and it was about these pressing issues, and it people showed up on a weekend to be present, and they stayed. You had strong participation all the way through. So it's harder to bring in the recorded video because it kind of locks you down while you're trying to also facilitate, but it came out in the impact it had. It felt very well produced, and it also didn't feel too controlled and just about presentation. It was a dance, it was a conversation. And I thought that, as you mentioned earlier, how you had a plan to move to do one of the workshop exercises where people were going to envision themselves on a model of collaborative change. You did it in the room where you were because you read how things were going and you realized you could just do it right here, and even flexibly brought that in from where it was supposed to happen in another space to keep it simple. And I thought that worked very well. So I like that flexibility too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to credit too. It's interesting. I had a co-designer, which I've learned over the years there are other parts of a team that I need because it's not the part that I even know to even try to do well. I don't even know to do it, right? So
Hmm.
I couldn't possibly do it well. I wouldn't ignore doing it in the first place. So Brenda Delal helped in the design at the very design phases. And I credit her with saying, well, do we have any young voices? It would be great to
Hmm.
have high school students. And that immediately brought in the seeds students because I already knew and we were champions of the seeds program, which were fifth to seventh graders. And then the MC and the big welcome person, and then Isabel that helped with the icebreaker are all sophomore college students that I know because they've been part of Reimagine Science since their sophomore years in high school. And but it was Brenda's vision. I wouldn't have thought to invite them. So she created a lot of the emotional structure, and then I could fill in. And the one thing that I can do is create an arc of development. So that flow, that ebb and flow, is something that I will take credit for because I think that is an ability that I've developed over the years. But Brenda's vision, it wouldn't have been the same event at all without her
I'm glad you called
ability
that
to
out,
build.
the intergenerational aspects of, yes, poets as young as fifth grade, because this is about in the environment in the future. These are necessary voices, they're critical voices, and that is what made it even more powerful. So so much was happening in that event that I'm glad you brought it out now, because yes, that was one of the key takeaways, and that's something that I should share with others, that even if they just have one younger voice in their event, it will transform it to a significant degree. So that's something that I will be recommending that other people follow, the things that I learned from your event. So
Yeah, the
well
feedback has
done.
been that's when it tipped actually. And those, I mean, even thinking of them right now, they were so sweet. Like they were so amazing. And the feedback was that that was the moment that it tipped for people was when we had the seeds students reciting their poetry. And that was a lot of clicking because I had to go from one, there were individual videos, they weren't concatenated together. So that was, you know, I was nervous about switching between each of them and starting them, but it went well.
Super. Well, there's a lot already discussed here and lessons learned for others to share. And anything else that you want to share as we probably, I've already very happy with what we've heard here. I think people are very happy to hear this. Is there anything else you'd like to share with others?
Well, I will just say when before I left the shared screen, I was going to show, but when we were in the spatial chat, the coffee, we experimented with how far our
Mhm.
avatars had to move before we stopped hearing other people. It was just a really nice multi-dimensional part of it that it was fun for me to be able to go explore after all of the clicking and making sure the event flow went well was done. So having that time at the end where we could explore on the platform was really precious. Um, and yeah, the different levels. Joey was precious. Like what he brought in the design elements was so much fun to work with and to see. And it did take trust on my part because not only did that come together just right before, but even the seeds poetry, we didn't get those until 5 a.m. that morning. Like we were working kind of through the night. And yet it's dear friends that I trusted. So I'm just like, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. So yeah, it was just wonderful to have the ability that Joey brought. And you knew that. You had recommended it when you and I first met, and then you brought him into the our first strategic meeting. You said, "Oh, Joey's good at this," and you were absolutely right.
Yeah, no, it was a tight week because there was a conference just a few days ahead of yours that required a tremendous amount of his time. So we,
Right, and to
yeah,
convert from that to
yeah.
full on attention and getting this one done so beautifully. That's why I said you were both miracleists. You both were real miracle performers.
Well,
I
I'm
really
sure we'll be
appreciate
working
it.
together in the future, Ken, and I look forward to future collaborations and taking now the things I've seen here, sharing them with others who are in need of something similar, just a tweak here and there with their event. So a lot of these lessons learned, people will experience them, but they won't know where it came from. But I'll next time I see you, as I share these ideas, I'll let you know.
Excellent. No, I love hearing that. All right, Lucas.
Ciao. Thank you so much, Kenan. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.